Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise and really get to the heart of some complex stories. And today we're unraveling one that starts with something just, well, shocking. A headline about farming chemicals leading to violence. Okay, let's try to unpack this. Picture it. Arkansas, 2016. A farmer, Mike Wallace, is murdered. And the motive, it wasn't money. It wasn't, a land dispute like you might expect. No, it was specifically about herbicides. Disputes over herbicides, a farmer's life taken over the actual chemicals used in farming. It just paints a really chilling picture, doesn't it? About these tensions maybe hidden under the surface.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And what's truly disturbing is that our sources show this wasn't just some a random tragic event. It actually connects to a much bigger picture. It shows how one company, really its power and policies, created these deep, deep divides among farmers, sometimes violent ones. We're talking about Monsanto, of course, a company that, at one point controlled something like over 80% of U.S. seeds. And this wasn't just like winning in the marketplace. Our sources talk about aggressive legal tactics. Things like suing farmers if their fields got accidentally contaminated by Monsanto's patented seeds, or investigating farmers who saved seeds. It created this climate of fear, really, huge pressure. It really shifted the power in farming community.
Right. And that whole tangled web is exactly what we want to unravel for you today. So, our mission in this deep dive is to pull out the key insights from the sources we've looked at. We'll trace Monsanto's story right from its early scientific innovations, which seemed positive at first, all the way to its massive global impact. We're going to explore how science and power and even war and definitely human suffering got so deeply tangled up in their history. Okay, so let's rewind. Way back. Before all these modern conflicts, before the lawsuits and the dominance, how did we even get here? How did these incredibly powerful chemicals, herbicides, become so central to farming? Where did they come from?
Yet to get that, we need to go back to 1942. There's a chemist, Franklin D. Jones, and his motivation, initially anyway, wasn't about, changing global agriculture or anything grand like that. It was personal. His kids had terrible allergic reactions to poison ivy. He was just trying to solve a problem on his own property. A very relatable kind of household issue. So Jones, during his research, he makes this huge discovery, a compound he called 2004-D. That's 2000-dichlorphenoxyacetic acid for the chemists listening. And this stuff had this incredible property, almost like magic at the time. It could selectively kill broadleaf plants, weeds like dandelions, thistles, that poison ivy, but it left grasses like corn or wheat totally unharmed.
Wow.
Yeah, imagine the impact. Before that, weed killers basically killed everything. And then later they found a related compound, 2,5,5-T, which was apparently even more selective, building right on Jones's breakthrough.
All right, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I mean, think what a game changer this must have been for farmers. Before this, you're either weeding huge fields by hand, just backbreaking work, or you're using something dangerous like arsenic, which, as you said, killed everything. So these were the first practical selective herbicides, a total paradigm shift, right?
Absolutely.
It really feels like this initial phase of, I don't know, scientific optimism, chemistry offering these neat targeted solutions to big farming problems. But was anyone back then raising concerns, or was the promise just so big that potential risks got overlooked?
Well, that's a key point. The immediate benefits, undeniable, hugely appealing. Farmers wanted efficiency, right? But our sources do suggest there was maybe a growing awareness of just how potent these things were. Early questions about, ecological impacts, long-term effects. They were starting to surface in scientific circles. But the full picture, especially the human health side, that was still a long way off. And yeah, the potential for good often just overshadowed those early, maybe quieter concerns.
And that drive for efficiency, that progress. It seems it came with a hidden vulnerability, because as the herbicide industry took off in the late 40s, you get these big players like Monsanto jumping in with massive industrial capacity. And like often happens when things scale up super fast before safety is fully understood, a problem starts to emerge. A really tragic one, right, where they were making the stuff.
Exactly. Monsanto moved fast, became a major player. They had this huge factory in Nitro, West Virginia, producing tons and tons of 2,R-4,4-half and 5-T. But then 1949, a really pivotal, awful event. An explosion at the nitro plant. It released this toxic cloud, and almost right away, workers started developing these horrific skin conditions.
Horrific.
I mean, disfiguring cystic acne, painful lesions, a condition we now know as chloracne.
Right.
Covering their bodies. It was bad, really bad.
Right there on their own factory floor. People getting visibly, horribly sick. But did they know why? Did they understand what was actually causing this awful reaction at the time?
Not right away, no. The exact cause was a mystery for a while. A terrifying one, obviously, as the symptoms kept showing up. It wasn't until a German dermatologist, Karl Schultz, made the connection later. And it was truly alarming. The culprit, a substance called dioxin.
Dioxin, okay.
Yeah. Schultz figured out that dioxin wasn't something they were trying to make. It was a byproduct, highly toxic. It formed when the manufacturing temperature for 2004 over 5T went just slightly too high, just a little bit off. And it silently contaminated batches of the herbicide.
Silently contaminating, so it wasn't obvious.
Not at all obvious in the product itself. But what Schultz stressed, and this is absolutely critical, was dioxin's extreme potency. We're talking trace amounts. Minuscule quantities, parts per trillion, could cause serious illness. Not just the skin problems they saw immediately in nitro, but much sneakier long-term health effects. And our sources show Schultz warned Monsanto. He warned other companies too, told them about the danger, the specific conditions causing it. But, incredibly, Monsanto later denied getting those warnings, or at least denied understanding how serious they were.
Wow. So this wasn't just some unfortunate industrial accident. It was a known contaminant, a hidden danger. Schultz warns them, lays it out. Monsanto denies it. What does that tell us about the ethics back then? About the choices these big companies were making right from the start?
It's quite profound, really.
Yeah.
Our sources really drive this home. These weren't just, honest mistakes or unknown risks playing out. This looks like a deliberate choice to withhold, or at least downplay, critical information about a super toxic contaminant. It set a really disturbing precedent, didn't it? Showing how powerful companies could basically trade public health for growth and profit, deciding essentially that the hidden costs would become human costs, just maybe not immediately visible.
That pattern, prioritizing profit over precaution, it seems it was established very early on.
And that hidden enemy, dioxin. It didn't stay hidden, did it? It moved from that factory floor onto the world stage. A much bigger, darker role in military conflict. That's exactly right. The whole story takes a dramatic turn in 1961. South Vietnam was asking the U.S. for urgent help against the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong were masters at using the dense jungle, triple canopy jungle for cover, hiding, moving, launching attacks. It was a huge tactical problem for the U.S. and South Vietnamese forces.
Right, the jungle warfare aspect.
Precisely. So the U.S. response was Operation Ranch Hand. The goal, defoliate huge areas, strip away the enemy's cover, destroy their crops. And the tool they used was Agent Orange, which was essentially a 50-50 mix of 2040 and that 2005T we've been talking about, and Monsanto. They were a major supplier, actually the largest single supplier of Agent Orange. Millions of gallons.
Agent Orange. The name itself is just infamous. What was the actual impact? I mean, on the ground, environmentally, but more importantly on the people.
Oh, the impact was catastrophic, just devastating on so many levels. Environmentally, it wiped out something like 20% of Vietnam's jungles. Vast areas turned into wasteland. Some still haven't recovered today. The ecosystem was just shattered.
20%.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
It is. But the human cost, that was far worse. And it's still ongoing. Widespread contamination. Civilians, men, women, children living in those sprayed zones got drenched. And the soldiers too, American, Vietnamese, anyone handling it or exposed. And here's the crucial and frankly the most damning part, according to our sources. Monsanto and other suppliers like Dow, they knew about the dioxin risk in the 2-PLs and 4,5-T component. They knew how dangerous dioxin was from things like the nitro explosion.
They knew.
They knew, but they hid the truth. They were apparently terrified of the damage it would do to their industry, their reputation, their future profits, especially if it came out during wartime. They made a conscious choice, it seems, to put corporate interest ahead of the health and safety of millions of people.
That's hard to comprehend. Deliberate concealment.
So what were the consequences, the long-term human consequences of that choice? What did hiding that truth actually unleash?
It's a tragedy that's still unfolding, decades later. Our sources talk about millions suffering, cancers, severe disabilities, horrific birth defects appearing in the children, even grandchildren of those exposed. Generations.
Exactly. It wasn't just a physical injury. It tore families apart, created this intergenerational trauma that persists right now, today. Agent Orange stands as one of the darkest legacies of chemical warfare. It just lays bare how corporate greed, military objectives, and a shocking disregard for human life could combine to create this global tragedy. And the suffering continues. It really shows how the true cost of these decisions often falls on the most vulnerable for generations.
A truly grim chapter indeed. So, okay, facing the backlash from nitro, growing public awareness about 2,4,5-T, the absolute horror of Agent Orange unfolding, Monsanto must have been under unbelievable pressure. They must have been desperate, right? Scrambling for a replacement, a way out.
Absolutely. They were in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Financially pressured, reputation shredded, their main herbicide tied to catastrophe. It was in that exact environment, sort of a make-or-break moment for the company, that this scientist, Johnny Franz, after almost 10 years of hitting dead ends, trying to find something new, he finally has a breakthrough. This was in 1970.
After a decade of failure. Wow.
Yeah, persistence paid off, I guess. He discovered glyphosate. This was, well, it's exceptional. Glyphosate turned out to be incredibly powerful, like 10 times more potent than any herbicide before it. Now, unlike 2004 and 245T, glyphosate wasn't selective. It was broad spectrum. It killed pretty much any plant it touched.
That sounds like a drawback initially.
It might seem like it, yeah, but Monsanto turned that into a massive advantage later on.
It's just fascinating, isn't it, how one discovery made under that kind of pressure, almost desperation, could completely change everything for a company. How did glyphosate specifically redefine Monsanto's future and really global agriculture, especially if it killed everything?
Well, that's where the strategy comes in, the genius maybe, or calculated brilliance of it.
Yeah.
So glyphosate becomes the new star product, sold as Roundup, a name everyone knows now.
Right.
But the real game changer, Monsanto started developing and patenting genetically modified crops, Roundup-ready crops, corn, soy, cotton, etc. These crops were engineered to be resistant to glyphosate.
Ah, okay. I see where this is going.
That's exactly. So now, farmers could plant Monsanto's Roundup-ready seeds, then spray Roundup right over the entire field, kills all the weeds, leaves the cash crop standing. Simple, effective. This system fundamentally altered farming. It created the incredibly powerful loop. Buy our seeds, you basically have to buy our herbicide. It cemented Monsanto's dominance like never before, saved them financially. But, as our sources point out, it also set the stage for whole new waves of controversy, big ones, about biodiversity, superweeds, potential health impacts. The story wasn't over.
Right. So when we step back and look at the whole arc, from Dr. Jones trying to solve a poison ivy problem for his kids, all the way to this global giant involved in war, contamination, lawsuits, genetic modification, what does it all mean? What are the big takeaways?
Yeah, when you synthesize it all from the sources, you see these really clear recurring themes, and some are quite chilling. First, definitely, is corporate monopolies and control. Monsanto's grip over 80% of U.S. seeds at one point wasn't just market success. It involved, as we said, aggressive legal tactics, suing farmers, reshaping the power balance in agriculture itself.
Right.
And that connects right back to our opening story, Mike Wallace. The deep divides, the intense pressures that kind of control creates in farming communities.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, there's this constant tension between scientific innovation and safety. No question, breakthroughs like 2,4-D, like glyphosate, they revolutionized farming, made it incredibly efficient, changed how we produce food. But they were always tangled up with these toxic byproducts like dioxin or major flaws in oversight during production, often with terrible human costs that were sometimes deliberately hidden. The bright promise of science kept getting overshadowed by these dark consequences, foreseen or not.
Or deliberately ignored, it sounds like sometimes.
That too, yes. Third, the war and chemicals part. Agent Orange is just such a stark, horrific example. Corporate interests, military needs converging into this global tragedy. Not accidental contamination, but based on the sources, a conscious choice to hide information, leading to environmental ruin and human suffering that just echoes through generations. A wound that hasn't healed.
A permanent scar.
Pretty much. And finally, glyphosate's rise. It shows amazing corporate resilience, you could say. A miracle discovery rescues Monsanto financially, lets them rebuild an empire. But that new empire, built on GMOs and Roundup, it just foreshadowed and then ignited its own massive controversies. It reminds us that these patterns of power, of oversight, of unintended consequences, they often repeat, even when the chemicals change.
So our sources really paint this picture of Monsanto's innovations being just completely bound up with science, yes, but also with power, with war, with immense human suffering. It's like a history of modern agriculture, but also this profound cautionary tale about what happens when corporate influence goes unchecked, about the real cost of industrial progress, and the sheer power companies can hold over, well, the food we eat. What a journey we've taken, seriously, from that awful murder in Arkansas over herbicides, all the way back to the hopeful discovery of selective weed killers for, poison ivy, through the absolute devastation of Agent Orange on a global scale, and landing with the rise of Roundup and this whole new era of agricultural dominance. And threading through it all is this theme of immense corporate power and undeniably significant human cost. When you look at that full story, the question isn't just what did Monsanto invent or how did it change farming? It feels more like what did that invention and how it was used truly unleash?
Hmm.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it, about the true cost, the hidden costs of progress and influence when it's not properly checked.
Indeed, it really does. It forces us to keep asking, how do we balance scientific innovation, which can be amazing, with the huge ethical responsibility that has to come with it? And it shows just how deeply connected our food systems are to everything else: global conflicts, public health, the everyday lives of millions. Which I think leaves a really important question for you listening. Where do we draw the line between pushing science forward and ensuring corporate accountability, especially when people's lives and the health of our planet are literally hanging in the balance?